Wire wrapping part 2. I'm going to try this again. I think the camera cut off. I don't know why, but we're going to find out. So here we go again. I've got one of these left to do. You'll notice I just got it soldered together. I didn't solder the backside. I do that for a reason. I'm doing this on top of a piece of plate glass. I use 24 gauge copper wire, not to pre-tin, at least for me. I know people go, well, if you're doing just stuff like this, pre-tinning, pre-tin copper wire, that's fine. But I use the wire for other purposes in my studio, so I don't need to have it or want to have it pre-tinned. So, and I've made other videos for using wire on other things like assembling lampshades without panel lamps without having to have a form or having to use that frustrating, aggravating electrical tape to hold things together. And if you're doing a panel lamp and you're using the process I've detailed, then having pre-tinned wire will cross that gap because it's already soldered. Soldered will go where it's been before. Looks like water in a leaky roof. Once it's been somewhere, it'll go there again. So I don't use the pre-tin. But if you're not making panel shades like I do, then you don't necessarily need that to have the if you're not making panel shades, then that's a moot point. But the copper 24 gauge is supple enough to go into little corners like that without it being a big hassle, and it's also what some of you might not understand or realize, that the thicker the wire, the longer it holds the heat, the more heat it takes to solder to it. See, so I can hold this and even be close to it, and I'm not burning my fingers, but basically I do have fingernails. That helps a lot too. But the thicker the wire, the more heat it takes. The more heat it takes, the longer it holds the heat. The longer it holds the heat, the greater the chances that, yes, you will burn your fingers. And I don't want to burn my fingers, so that's why I use this gauge. And the wire actually gives a nice foundation for a nice rounded bead. And I know some of you that are out there that, well, I don't have to put that on there. Well, that's fine. You just put a heavy coat of solder, but you're soldering a tissue. Copper foil is basically a tissue. It's not meant to be load bearing. It's never for that. It's just has an adhesive to hold it on the glass until you get it soldered. And then when you're all done with the soldering, it's made its own little framework. Okay? And I know some folks out there that, you put a heavy coat of solder on something, and then maybe you sold it at a craft fair or an art festival. Somebody buys it and takes it halfway across the country and gives it to somebody else as a present. And they hang it up in the house and they love it, they cherish it, and then they take it down to clean it, and they give it a vigorous cleaning, and it disintegrates. Or the copper foil peels off the edge. Or, there's a whole plethora of things that can happen to it. And guess what? Then it has to come to me. You think they're going to take it to the other side of the country where they bought it at an art festival? Or give it back to the person that gave it to them as a gift and say, look, this thing you gave me disintegrated. You take it and fix it. That doesn't happen. So it winds up coming to somebody like me, and I have to go back and, patch foil, put wire on places where it didn't have it before. It's just, so I do this, okay, for me, and maybe in the future, some other poor soul like me won't have to fix it because it didn't have this on there to begin with. So now I've come to where we make a loop. Okay? So basically, because I don't like jump rings, I've got a box of them somewhere, don't use them. Okay, so what I do, and I do this with the stars that I've shown this to also, is I'm just wrapping my wire around my flux brush a few times. Okay, a few times, and voila, there's my loop. Okay, and look at that. See if we got that in frame. See that? There's my loop. Cut a few inches off so we can overlap. See? See that? There is my loop. And that's what solder does. Okay? Here's my loop. There's my overlap so it doesn't pop up later. Okay? And like I said, you know, I can do that with my fingernail. 18 gauge wire, I would have burned my little finger to death. So thank you. I'm going to do another video about putting a bead on an edge just in case y'all didn't get that before. Thank you, God bless, and have a good day. Bye-bye.